may have to tell me. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, be good to go.
Great. Well, welcome everyone to our working group meeting. It is I'm so happy to see you all. I wish I could be with you. But as many of you know, right before an election day, politicians are running around picking up all the germs they possibly can. And I picked up some doozies, so I am going to stay home and do it from here. And so I don't pass on all of the things I've been exposed to in the last few days. I am really very excited to be coming back and get to stay with you through the entire course of this working group. With that, we'll take a look at the, let's put the agenda up. We'll get the agenda in front of you. While we're doing that, just a couple reminders. This is being recorded and also being streamed on YouTube, and then it'll also live on our YouTube channel. So again, if you to know that you are definitely, it's a public meeting. Also, because of that, for those of us who are on it virtually, keep in mind that the chat is also public data, and so I wouldn't, like I always say, don't share your grandma's secret chocolate chip cookie recipe, because we'll all have it, and so will the whole state of Minnesota for all time. So keep that in mind. We generally use a chat just for things that are technical, like I can't hear, I can't see something, so that all of the discussion, everybody benefits from that discussion. This is the first time I've tried sharing something remotely. So if there are any problems with us for recognition on here, I think one of the things that we've done when we're totally virtual was, when in doubt, just start talking. That was also a help. And let's also say our names, because for those of us who are watching virtually, even if we pull you to full size, those of you in the conference room, you're tiny. So it's not always easy for us to tell who's talking. So I think always saying, if you start Blaha here, or this is Ron, or however we want to start, and that might be the easiest way for us to make sure that everyone knows who is talking without having to come up with fun cartoon voices for everybody, so it's really apparent. All right. So with that, let's start out with you. We have the agenda before us, and I have a request, since our staff is our OSA staff that is coming in from our audit team is still in the thick of fun audit work. And so we're hoping that if there's no objection, we could move the discussion of the audit threshold up first. Even before we go through the working group topic rankings, I can tell you that if you saw those notes, this was a topic that was highly, highly ranked to come up right away. And this way we can have them available to us to talk about the finer points of audits, and then they can leave right when they're done with that section. So just wanted to, so is there any objection to moving item 8 up to basically item 4, the first topic that we talked to? Again, just a reminder for anybody who's new to this, I like to use unanimous consent quite a bit here, where I say, if there is no objection, that means we're not go vote on it, go through the longer formal process. But all you have to do is to say, I object. That moves us back into actually formally discussing and voting on things on that. So again, just to be sure, so without objection, we'll move item 8 up to right before working group topic rankings. I'm not hearing or seeing any objection. All right. So with that, is there any further discussion on the agenda? Any other changes people would like to make or questions? All right. So if there are no objection to the entire agenda in that new order, we'll proceed with the agenda, that again, simply moving item 8 up first. All right, I see no objection. So with that, we have our agenda. Let's go now to the minutes of the last meeting. And so you know that we had several people who were having a great time up north. So we'll see some differences there. Are there any changes to the minutes? It's also a good time for me to remind people who are watching this on YouTube or joining us from the public that, excuse me, that we try to get this information out. And one of the things I've always appreciated about this working group is that they come in really prepared. So if you're ever not seeing a lot of discussion on things or moving quickly through things, it's because the committee members have taken their own time to read through everything before they came here. And again, we really appreciate that. We just want to make sure that we're going quickly. It's because people have done this outside the meeting. So I haven't seen any changes to the agenda, to the minutes. So without objection, we will accept the minutes as written before us now. All right, not hearing any objections, we've approved our minutes. And so now let's go around again. What we did at our first meeting was go through introductions by saying, you know, who we are and how we come to this. I mean, people can put in other things about yourself if you'd like, but basically it's just basically, you know, what connection you have to this topic, and maybe also how long you've served on this committee. So I'll start, and then we'll have Rose kind of walk through her list. This will also be how we take attendance for this meeting. And walk us through. So I'll start. I'm Julie Blaha. I'm your state auditor. I am finishing up my first term. And so this is now the 4th year I've had a chance to participate on that. And I'm coming to this from the numbers side. So I get to follow the lead of all of you who work with this every single day. So with that, Rose, maybe you could walk through everybody and give them a chance to introduce themselves.
Sure. Eric Bullen.
Oh, I get to start. Perfect. Eric Bullen, Fire Chief, City of Albertville. Recently appointed to the executive board for the State Fire Chiefs Association. So I'm their liaison to this working group. I think this is my 2.5 year, something like that.
Steve Donnie. Sue Iverson. And Sue did email me, so I think she's planning to hop on the Zoom here. So we might join. Dan Johnson.
Dan Johnson, captain in Mendota Heights, 3 years on the board there. Just finished my first year as treasurer and 2nd year on the working group.
Ron Johnson. Oh, you're
Not
muted.
mute.
Oh, Ron, you're muted.
Sorry about that. You had flashed at me. Ron Johnson, I was 21 years with Maple Grove Fire Relief as treasurer, and 22 years as a firefighter. I'm a member of the MSFDA, and that's what I represent is the Fire Department Association. I'm specialist in defined contribution, although I do provide teaching and training at the conferences for both pension and helping the boards work. I'm been on the relief or on this particular working group for about 5 or 6 years, I think. And it has been both rewarding in both directions. I know I've contributed a lot, but I've also learned a lot. So thank you all for participating.
Aaron Johnston.
Aaron Johnston, representing Coon Rapids Fire Department Defined Contribution Plan. I'm the treasurer of that Relief Association. I've been on the department there for 28 years. I've been on this group for 12, I think, if my math is correct, 2010-ish. So that's me.
Carl Mork.
Hello, I'm Carl Mork. I'm with Bemidji Fire Department and been on the relief and the department since 2014, been treasurer since 2016-17, and had the pleasure to work with Bruce Hempstead for many years.
Andy Pezek. Daryl Pettis.
Daryl Pettis, I am a member of the St. Peter Volunteer Fire Department. I'm currently serve as a captain. I've been on the Relief Association for about 14 years, been a firefighter for 18 years. I serve as a treasurer of the Relief Association. I believe this is my 3rd year on this group.
Kevin Wall.
Kevin Wall, Lower St. Croix Valley Fire, president of the Relief Association. We're a defined benefit lump sum plan. and joint powers agreement. I've been on the fire department for 30-some years. Been with this group about 8, I think. Probably at least eight years. Glad to be here.
Michael Wallstein.
Hi, everybody. Mike Wallstein with the Plymouth Fire Department. I'm a firefighter with Plymouth. I was part of the special investigative, whatever it was, the thing that we did a couple of years ago to investigate, to make recommendations to go from a defined benefit plan to defined contribution plan, helped with that. And we helped lobby to make that happen in 2020 and got that bill passed, which was fun. Spearheaded the conversion of our plan from a defined benefit to a defined contribution plan. So ran through those trenches. And we also have initiated a revenue sharing agreement with our city. And now I've stepped down from the Fire Relief Association and I'm just a firefighter.
And Tom Wilson.
My name is Tom Wilson. I represent the Eden Prairie Fire Association. I've been secretary of the board, a member of the board for 20 years, been a part of this group for the last 5 years.
Hey, and can we go through, Rose, if we can also go through staff and as well, that'd be great.
Sure.
Do you want me to start? Okay, I don't know where to look. Bonnie. I am the general counsel and one of the 2 deputy state auditors, and I've been with the office since 2016. So this might be my 7th. I don't know if I participated the first year, maybe the 6th or 7th year working with the working group. And it just dawned on me, I have kind of a tangential connection now to firefighting in that my brother is a volunteer firefighter as of this year in Pennsylvania.
I'm Amy Eames. I'm an audit manager here at the OSA, and I've worked here for 25 years. Just here, if there's questions.
Getting the camera here. Maya Dabney Miller here. I am a pension analyst, and I've been here for almost 30 years now. My name is Rose Hennessy Allen, the pension director here, and I started with Yapis in 2000. And Molly Rush is she's one of our pension analysts. She'll be joining us shortly. She's been letting people into the building. And Michael Johnson is another of our pension analysts, and he's watching on the live stream to troubleshoot any tech on that end for us. And I think Diane.
Yes. Hi, I'm Diane Severson, and I am the Deputy State Auditor for the Audit Division, and I have been here for 38 years come December. So.
Great. And I also want to make sure we recognize Susan Lancheski and Chad Burkett as well, since they work so closely with what we do. And from the excuse me, just like, you know what, while I cough here a little bit, maybe we could just, Chad and Susan, go ahead and introduce yourselves before I gag on this a little bit here. Maybe Susan, if you could start out.
Susan Lancheski with the Legislative Commission on Pensions and Retirement. Thank you, Auditor.
Yeah, Chad Burkett, also with the LCPR. I think I've been doing this since 2019 is when I started in this role, and that's how long I've been assisting this group. So good to see everybody.
Yeah, and Susan, how long have you been serving in this role again?
2015 is when I took the job here in the legislature, so it's been since then. I think Auditor Otto was, I worked with her for three years or so, I guess, before that. Yeah.
Sounds right. Yeah. Well, again, so we have a great group here. And then if anyone comes in as we go, we'll let them in and get them a chance to connect as well. So Rose, do we get everybody?
I think we did.
Terrific. Well, let's go right into our first item then. and take a look here. Excuse me, and that is a discussion of the audit threshold. Now, we have talked about this in the past. This might be a year that we want to take some action on it. And so we wanted to make sure we had people here to answer your questions. We also know that there may have been some interesting news some of you got today that might make you more interested in this topic as well. We can go into it when we get to our discussion. And so Rose, maybe again, kind of, if you could walk through kind of what we know about our audit thresholds. And then again, we will open it up for a discussion of our options. And then again, since we brought our audit experts, and as you've heard, they have deep expertise in this, then we can kind of walk through any other specifics on here. So Rose, I'll kick it over to you to talk about our audit thresholds.
Sure, and this is Exhibit G in the materials. So initially, the audit threshold was $200,000, and that was set in 1986. And so if a relief association had more than 200,000 in either assets of their special fund or liabilities, the relief association needed to have an annual audit done. Once a relief association went over that threshold, the audit was required to, even if you subsequently drop back down below that threshold. So once you go over, you have the audit requirement, even if you drop back down below. And so back, again, that 200,000 was set in 1986. It hadn't been really reviewed or changed then until 2013. And in 2013, the threshold was changed and increased up to 500,000. And so in the table in the background section, it shows kind of what the effect that had with that threshold change back in 2013. So at that time, we went to having about 71% of relief associations not needing an audit, and about 29% that did need the audit. And then after that threshold change was made, it kind of flipped. So at that point, then it went up to about, let's see here. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong line here. But it kind of flipped the number with the audit requirement and those without. And we also provided some data here on filing. So what we've seen in our office is relief associations that have the audit requirement have historically filed their reports with us earlier or on time. And so we show in the table the average days late and the percent that filed on time for those with the audit requirement and those without. And then on the 2021 line, that's our current reporting year. Right now, we've got about half and half. So we've got, I think, about 57% that have the audit requirement right now, 43% that aren't required to have the audit. If a relief association isn't required to have an audit done, they have what's called an agreed upon procedures engagement instead. So you still need to work with an auditor. It's just not a full-blown audit that you have to have. Instead, the auditor reviews your reporting information with us, and then they go through different procedures and complete those and submit that report to us. And we ran the numbers to look at, again, the 500,000 threshold was set in 2013. It hasn't changed since then. So we looked at what would that threshold be today if it had been adjusted for inflation each year along the way. And if it had been adjusted for inflation, it would be a little over 600,000 for the current reporting year. On the second page, we show what the audit requirements are for some other types of entities that are similar or to relief associations. So we show for cities and towns when an audit is required. So for cities, if there's a population over 2,500, the city is required to have an annual audit performed regardless of their asset size. And then cities with combined clerk treasurers, if they have a population of 2,500 or less and have the combined clerk treasurer, they have to have an annual audit if the revenue is more than 245,000. For towns, if the population is over 2,500 and their annual revenue exceeds a little over $1 million, then they need to have an audit. And then towns with combined clerk treasurers have the audit if their annual revenue and at 245,000.
Rose, if you can maybe just a tiny bit louder. Just what it just started to drop a little bit lately.
Sure, yeah. So that 245,000 threshold for cities and towns, that is indexed and that does change every year based on, I believe, inflation. Is that right? And then, so we have a couple of options laid out for you. These are options that the working group has considered previously, and we wanted to bring those back to the group again for consideration. So one option would be to make no change and to continue monitoring whether the threshold is appropriate or not. Another option would be to increase the threshold on a going forward basis, and then possibly increase the threshold then each year based on inflation or some other type of factor. A third option would be to increase the threshold to the current inflation adjusted value or some other value, and then make adjustments going forward each year. A fourth option that has come up in the past is to make a change so that audits would be required if certain risk factors exist. And those might be things that our auditors could touch on for us. But if there are certain identified risk factors, then an audit would be required. And so, for example, if the Relief Association is doing fundraising activities and there's a lot more cash or transactions going in and out of the funds, maybe that would trigger an audit. If the Relief Association isn't invested through the State Board of Investments and there's more investment transfers or different higher risk types of investments, maybe that would trigger an audit. And then if there's other options to consider.
You know, I would like to add one, Rose. And I think I know Rose and me and the audit team discussed it just very briefly this morning. But can we add a number 5? And it would be increase the threshold on an increase the threshold to $600,000. And simply and continue to have this this body take a look at that each year going forward. And so just to explain that, the idea that we would just kick it up to 600,000 right now, but rather than adding a formula or an inflation adjustment kind of a kicker in there, that we raise it to 600,000 this year and then keep an eye on it through this group going forward and have it just come back, you know, each year just for us to touch on it each year. So we'll just, if that's understandable, if we can just add that to one of our options. Any problems or questions on how that would work? Just a one-time 600,000 and then keep an eye on it. All right.
How would that affect a relief association that is already required to have an audit at $500,000 level, and the fund is only at $550,000 because they were in and now they're out? But the old rule was once you hit the in level, you stayed in.
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, is it right now, just to make sure I get it, it's not, it's not, are we still at an, once you're in, you stay in, or now it's just simply that threshold? Rose, if you could maybe clarify that.
So we still have it where once you're in, you're in. So once you cross the threshold, you're required to have the audit done annually. Back when in 2013, when the threshold last was changed, the law was drafted in such a way that it kind of reset the threshold for everybody. So if in your example, if you have 550,000 under how it was drafted previously, you wouldn't need to do the audit anymore. It just reset for everybody, and you only had to do it if you were above the new threshold.
And then I guess my thinking would be, again, we do it once you're in, so you don't have to keep deciding each year. But yeah, I think that's what I'd like to propose too, is that idea that it would be fresh start. So we reevaluate everybody at the $600,000 on there. And I don't know if we want to add this in now, Rose, but, you know, I think one challenge that we've seen and we've been hearing a lot about in our office and frankly across the country is the challenge of finding auditors. Now, I don't, you know, personally, I think we set our standards based on risk and need and what we think will make our relief associations effective and strong. But it is a thing to be mindful of that we have, it's getting increasingly challenging to find auditors. Some of that, I think, COVID exacerbated an issue that we have been seeing over time, simply just fewer and fewer people going into accounting. So, hey, any of you that are watching this, fun fact, right now is a good time to be an accountant. You are in demand and you can, the pay is good, the benefits are good, we're delightful to work with, all of that. But in that is another reality a lot of you are facing. If I'm not mistaken, we also heard, I think just today, many reliefs have found out that there is an audit firm that decided that they're just simply not going to take this business on anymore. And it does affect the number of people that we see. So that is another thing that's out in the world right now and that I think we're all dealing with. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there as another thing that we're all facing. But with that, I think this would be a good time to talk through questions or ideas, so questions or comments on what you see on here. And again, either start talking or give me a wave.
Auditor, it's Dan Johnson.
Thank you, Dan.
Me looking at list, you know, the city's combined clerks, that 245, Rose has already said that's an index number. I have to believe that the town's annual revenue number of $1,092,000, that's an index number. That's not an arbitrary number that somebody picked. Some sort of an index number makes sense so that it keeps up with the time, because I don't know how, I don't remember how long it had been 200,000 before it was raised to 500 in 2013, but just every decade or whatever it's going to be, have to have the conversation again. Makes more sense. Built into it to me.
You know, I was having the same thought myself too, because I love that indexing stuff. Now, again, as a math person, that's something I love. But I know that that's not as that there are people who have some concerns about that. And I don't know if either Rose, you can explain that, or what are we hearing about some of the pushback on the idea of having something change every year on there. I don't know if either Rose or if there's anybody else who wanted to speak to that, because we do hear that a lot as well.
Well, it's an ever-changing number. And so then it's one more thing for people to keep track of and monitor. And so it's getting missed sometimes when they go over that threshold, because it's an ever-changing number. And so that can be a little problematic with an index like that.
And Amy, you're saying that that's what we see with the towns and cities that we're seeing. Is that where you're seeing that?
Yeah, or other governments, right?
So Aaron Johnston, question: if we were to index this and a relief isn't paying attention and they don't do their audit, their penalty is you hold their 2% money? Or what's the penalty if for not doing it? And whether it's by missing it or just not wanting to do it.
Yeah, if Rose, if you could answer that, and then I'm also I see Eric and Michael as so Eric. I'm getting a little speaking order here. I've got Eric, Michael, Ron. You know, I think the waving at me, since I've also got you all kind of written down, might be the best way to do it too. For those of you in the room as well. I think I saw. Is it Dan? Did I saw a wave as well?
I was just goofing around. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Well, all right. So, all right. So Rose, and then we'll go Eric, Michael, Ron.
So the audit or the agreed upon procedures engagement, whichever one of those is required by statute to be done, is required to be filed with us in order for a relief association to qualify for fire state aid. And in the statute currently, our office is prohibited from granting a filing extension beyond November 30th. So this, at the end of November, any relief associations that don't file their annual reports, including the audit or that agreed upon procedures report, will automatically forfeit fire state aid. And they don't qualify for future state aid until those missing reports are filed with us. So we do a lot of reaching out before those deadlines. So starting in either March or June, depending on when your reporting deadline is, we start sending email notices out. We'll do mail notices, letting relief associations know if your forms are late or if the audit is late, and we identify what we're missing. And then starting in October and November, we start calling everybody. So I've got some of my team members are making phone calls right now to fire chiefs and auditors and trying to work on getting things.
Maybe I can ask a question to clarify that too. How long do these audits take? So how much, how close could you get and say, shoot, you're so close, you wouldn't be able to get the audit done? Typically, what kind of turnaround time do you need to get these audits finished?
That all depends on how good the records are.
Maybe, okay, great record. Someone with great records. How long would that take? A couple months?
My first time through it last year, it was 6 months from the first year until June 30th. I had stuff going on that entire time. And I don't know if that was just me being bad or the auditing firm or what, but
It's our experience too.
Got it. All right, I have Eric, Michael, Ron, and then Daryl.
Thank you, Auditor. For timing, I would say it's at least 3 to 4 months, especially if we lost another firm, it's going to be at least that. So I'll comment first on the option, and then we've got some other questions for later, but I think this is the prevalent topic. I agree with setting a hard number. I like 600,000. The majority, it's obviously that number affects the smaller departments. The budgeting piece is big. I don't want to set a number that increases every year. So a relief association or a city or whatever budgets for this audit. One year they don't need it. Next year they need it because of inflationary tactics or inflation goes up or down. It's easier sitting on the budget side to forecast. If we're over 600 or whatever that arbitrary number is that we pick, that's not tied to anything else. It's just easier for that city to budget for that versus where we at is going to be 605. Oh no, we only have a month and a half to get this in and it's already August or whatever. So that'd be my preference also on the option side.
I have Michael, Ron, and Daryl.
Eric stole my thunder, darn it. Agreed. I like the idea of a fixed amount. I like indexing. However, in this job, so many folks have come to me over the last couple of years with, we have to remember the process by which people are elected. Oftentimes they're elected, maybe they're on a truck during the meeting and they've been elected treasurer. I've seen that. And so it's, oh, well, this is my job now. What do I do? And the need for continuing education, the need to get support for these folks, the idea of 1 year you're in audit, the next year you're not, or maybe for years you haven't been in audit, and then you have to know what that threshold is. It's too much. I like the idea of increasing it, go big. 500, 600, both sound fine. Auditor, I like 600. That's great.
I'm gonna stop you because you're saying good stuff, but I think we lost the room. We are still going out to YouTube. We are still recording, but they are having to reconnect to us. So I think we're all together, and again, it's still recorded, but I may ask you to start that over when we come back here. And so I would also just say, hey, we could just do some icebreakers right now, but it is going over to YouTube. And I also have a thing about, not a huge fan of icebreakers. As a former teacher, I get asked, it's like, you must have the best icebreakers. And it's like, yes. And because I'm your friend, I'm not going to let you have any of them. Because I don't think you should do it with your group on there. So I think we should just kind of sit tight until we see the room come back. So this might be good.
I just want Michael to start again by saying that I stole his thunder when the room comes back. So
yes, we definitely have to get that back in. Yeah, Michael, yeah, we'll make sure you get that back in.
So Eric, next time we're on a meeting together, we're going to coordinate shirts and nobody will be able to tell us apart.
Hey, if you wear a quarter zip, you got a 95% chance of matching me, so that works.
Look at this, buddy. We're set. We're basically the same person. Obviously,
Auditor
ditto.
Blaha, this is Mike Strowing. I just heard from Kevin Wald. They lost the internet back in your office and they're trying to get it back up now.
Oh, my. Oh, that's delightful. All right, I'm getting some messages back as well on there too. Internet is down in the office. Huh. Well, I don't think we have a quorum, or we could just basically make all the decisions really quickly without them in the room. And I think that we basically, maybe we just have assigned Dan a whole bunch of tasks that he's been looking to do. I think he'd appreciate that.
Auditor, can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
I know in that room, there's probably a lot of folks with phones that could jump on Zoom.
Right. You know what? I think that, yeah. And I'm going to let Maya kind of work through that for a little bit because I know that they also have those. And if they, since we're still on and apparently I have hosting, I am still a host. Let's check that. If who I am considered here, if I am.
Mine says Eric is the host.
Oh, my.
Ooh.
Oh, you know what they did? It did. Once they popped off, they had to, it through the hosting. Let me just see what options I have. Okay, well, Aaron, you've got a lot of work to do here. And so let me just get my participant.
Just got interesting.
On there too. What am I? Oops, I'm gonna remove my pen here. Yeah, Eric, you are the host. And you know, if you can do this to me, why don't you, can you throw the host to me? If you'll go into your options. And so you should, and if you're familiar, I bet you're familiar with that. If not, you can just, you go over my name and the participants, pull up the 3 dots, and I believe you can name me as the host.
There you go.
It's you.
Great. I'm the host now. Great. And so I think I might have them do a good idea. Let's see here. Let's see here. Can you all connect by phone?
Here they come.
Are they back? Something's back. Oh, you are doing it by your phone, it looks like. Is that what you're doing, Rose?
Yes, I'm on my phone right now. It appears internet is down in the office, but we'll all join you as soon as we can. We've got other working group members here joining by phone too. So
terrific. And I'm listed as the host now too. So Maya, however, I think I can still run the hosting from here. And it looks like we are still streaming and we are still recording. So I believe we did have a brief moment when Eric was in charge of everything and it was really great. We got a lot done. And so we'll take another couple of minutes and when you're all back on, we'll get this set up. So it was good that I was exposed to COVID because that has made this much easier. Actually, I kind of like the walking around look. It gives it a really interesting video. Okay. So, oh, maybe I'm just going to make sure. I don't have to let people into this, right? Everybody's in automatically. Is that correct?
I think it looks like everybody's in.
Oh, it's just Maya and everybody. Oh, so we don't have our staff that's just not coming back in. Well, I think what I'm missing is I noticed that we don't have Chad or Susan on anymore, and I'm not sure what that is. They may have had to leave for some other reason too. And so I think we keep rolling and we'll just keep going on that. So maybe we go back to, again, we were on Michael, who was started out by saying something about Eric. So Michael, if you want to start again and repeat what you were saying there, it was really helpful.
Eric was right. It's the end of my comments. I like the big number. The adding the inconsistency of a number that's tied to inflation. I always like tying into. I love indexing. aside from when you have to take it down to that volunteer level. So many of our volunteers that are serving on fire relief associations are doing it because they were elected. They might not have interest. They might not have known that they were elected. I've had that happen a number of times where I've been contacted by someone who said, I wasn't there. They elected me. It's my job for 2 years. What do I do? We can't make things more complicated. We have to make it easier. My big question that I have is there, so there's always a need for audits. This is the state auditor's office. So, certainly that's important. Are there things that we find in the audits typically? Is there a reason to keep the threshold lower? My instinct is to go big, jack it up high to make sure that we reduce the number of audits for smaller plans. However, I don't know if there's a great need for audits in smaller plans. Have we found any evidence of a need?
Diane, I don't know if you want to speak to that. I see that you're on. Are you able to speak to that, Diane?
I can only recall what I've heard Rose say, I think, about, we talked about risks. Oh, Rose, we're talking about the need for audits and where the risks are and then how high you could raise the threshold to get some of the smaller relief associations out from under needing to have a full-blown audit. And it probably has mainly to do with risks. And she keeps disappearing. Rose has seen some reports where there's been some kind of misappropriation of funds, that kind of thing. And so what we talked about from an audit standpoint is making sure that the Relief Association knows where their risks are. If you're using a broker for your investments, that's great. That adds some kind of extra protection, but you need to look at like who and how are transfers authorized. Do you have more than one person who's looking at transactions or reviewing them or approving them? A lot of times I know we've seen where one person pretty much could do anything they wanted with little to no oversight or review. So you have to keep things like that in mind, not just for the special fund, but for the general fund also. A lot of times the general fund isn't going to get a big look from auditors because the funds in there are so small compared to the special fund. But I think Rose did say that they've seen a case where Amy didn't Rose say the other day that she has seen where somebody had enough authority to transfer funds even out of the general fund for their own purpose?
Yeah, it looks like Rose and Amy, you are sharing a phone, so I'll let you.
Yes, we are.
I'll let you guys speak to that.
Rose is right here. Yes, that was one of the situations where it was someone was able to transfer from the special fund to the general fund and withdraw those funds.
So I think if I'm not mistaken, we were talking about just kind of as a sidelight to get at that kind of a thing we were thinking about adding to the requirements for a UIP,
Agreed
right?
upon.
Agreed upon procedures look. So that's a risk that we can get at that would be covered by anybody, that would cover everybody. And so it's not like the threshold would get away from that big risk. We can add that to the agreed upon procedures examination as well. Oh, it almost looks like something might be going on. Anyway, so I don't know if does that answer your question? Michael, does that get at what you're looking at?
Maybe. I guess my question is, yeah. I suppose so. I don't see an issue with going to 500 or 600,000. It seems like there's onesie twosies out there, but by and large, not a whole host of problems. And so I think it could make sense to ratchet it up bigger. I haven't heard a compelling case not to.
So I'm seeing the order I have now is Ron, Daryl, and then Carl.
Yes, and actually I would, first of all, I agree with everything that y'all have said. And to go back to the timing of an audit, I think in Maple Grove, it would take between I think the longest was 4 months, but 3 months is about right. So I would agree with all of the rest of them. I'm also a gambling manager, so obviously pretty involved with charitable gambling, realizing that as a benchmark, it's quite similar, different from some of these others, but that benchmark there is $750,000 before an audit kicks in. So just to throw that out there, at least it's part of what the state, operates from that perspective. And the question then might be, some of it's already been answered in terms of risk and if the issues from some of the reliefs that there've been a problem, would 750 be too high? Or given where 500 is now and has been for several years, maybe 750 is. So it sounds like we have a range. 500 is maybe, and I'll throw out 750 just as a connection as it relates to what lawful gambling is.
Oh, interesting. All right, then I have Daryl and then Carl. I'm a little worried that I'm missing out on the people that were in the room. And so I feel like, so Aaron, Tom, Kevin, Dan, are they somewhere? I'm a little worried about that. Rose, can you tell us, are they? Oh, the conference room is back. Hey, all right. So, okay, so I have, this is the order I have for speaking right now. Again, I have Daryl, wait, Daryl, we didn't have you yet. Yeah, we didn't. Okay,
No.
great. So Daryl, Carl, give me a wave if you're in the room, if you want to get in the order as well. Okay, we'll go Daryl and then Carl.
I am very much in agreement with the 600,000, increasing it from 500,000 to 600,000. I think that's a good move. I would also support 750. That would be fine also. If that's too big of a leap or too big of a jump, I do understand that also. Something to keep in mind though, most of our relief associations are somewhat tied to another governmental entity, a city, a township, or something like that. We're almost being re-audited by the city auditor. They ask for our audit, we give them all our information. We're generally done 6 months before they start. And then we still get questions back on just some odd one-offs once in a while, like, well, where is your personnel information? When did this person join? When did this person leave? And things like that. So us changing our audits may not affect us that much if the city is going to require an audit of the Relief Association so we can be included in the city financials. Those are pretty much my my comments there. I would support the increase, whatever it would be.
Right. So next I have Carl. And I'm watching the room, and I'm just watching the room. Kevin, were you also trying to get in the speaking order? Okay, never mind. All right, Carl.
Yeah, I would also echo agreeing an increase. I also like indexing, but I realize if that's, I hear the points for not indexing, so I'm flexible on that. I do respective of like cost, right? I mean, as the person who pays the bill for the audit every year, like it's not cheap, and we're not a small relief association, and so at the same time, raising that level maybe reduces those costs, but at the same time, maybe those small organizations are also the ones where there's more risk because of they have less people minding the books. And as I professionally work in a nonprofit, so I totally understand that point of this whole game as well. So yeah, that's I'm liking where we're going. I'm supportive of an increase.
And maybe I was putting myself, maybe I can hop in, just kind of my thoughts, and then we'll go to Eric. I think the idea of, there is something, the 600,000, I think is something that's easy to explain to a legislator to say, hey, we're taking it, we're simply adjusting this for inflation. And doing it there. However, I think there is a practicality of just knowing how often we have to consider this and how hard it is to make a move. And would it be a good idea to make a move to 750,000, because we're not really expanding the risk as much, but we are also getting ahead. Also, I'm thinking that, again, I believe, Rose, we indexed for inflation through 2021. Is that correct? I don't know if we indexed it through 2022. And so 750,000 may be not that far out of line with where inflation is going anyway. So to get a little ahead of it, but not so far ahead of it that we're actually increasing the risk, but far enough ahead of it so that we don't have to be going back and effectively changing it every year anyway on there. So I personally, I'm feeling 750, I feel good about, but I can be definitely moved otherwise. So I've got Eric and then Ron.
I think hearing Ron's explanation on the gambling threshold, to me, makes sense that maybe this matches it too. So, I mean, a lot of gambling stuff are run by nonprofits or civic organizations, Lions clubs, things like that. So I think there's some similarity there. So I'll change my approval from 600 to 750. I think maybe a different way to look at that Michael's question, and that, like, if someone has in their bylaws, if there's no catch for 499.9, they could still do it at 700, right? Like, I think if there's, like you said, there's an understanding that everyone is in agreement. I don't think the number value has an effect on that, but either for the audit. So the way I'd maybe word it is the audit catching any just accounting errors for these relief associations at $500,000? And if we increase to 750, is there any concern from the audit staff that we're going to see more issues down the line? I think that's how I'd summarize those two questions. But I'm supportive. I don't want to lose some relief associations along the way that maybe should get an audit that don't. But I also don't want to, like, if the audit staff doesn't see that just increasing, I mean, we all lack controls and things like that. We're small organizations of 6 people, and there's double sharing and things like that. But is 750 going to create a bunch of issues that your staff sees?
Yeah, that's a good question. And maybe putting it over to Diane, Sue, and Rose does, because I think that what I'd heard from y'all is like 600,000 didn't send up any red flags. Would 750,000 send up any big red flags for any of you? And I see Sue also shaking her head too. So on that,
Amy, you mean?
no, actually, I'm sorry. Sue Iverson just joined us. Thank you for.
Oh, sorry.
Sue Iverson also joined us, and this is kind of her bailiwick as well. So maybe we go to Diane, and then maybe could we pop over to Sue maybe for an answer on that too? And then again, I still have Ron on the list as well coming up after that. So let's go, Diane, maybe Sue. What's your thoughts?
Well, I was gonna I'll throw something else in too here, because when someone said 750, and that's the threshold for a nonprofit, or no, a gambling audit. $750,000 is also the trigger for when, like, a single auditor is required for federal programs and federal money. Just another 750 comparison. But whenever you raise the threshold, I guess in terms of the requiring an audit, when an auditor comes in and they're looking at like what things are going to make a difference, what's material in the scheme of things, they're going to be basing it off likely your investment balances and take a percentage of that. And so if that's not really changing tremendously, then what's material to an auditor isn't going to change tremendously either. But Amy, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I agree. I don't have any concerns.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, let's Sue. What's your thought on that?
I agree with her. If they aren't changing what they're doing materially, and it's just the amount that's going up, it's not the dollar value. Like she said, there's a lot of things that get triggered at 750,000, and you want them triggered anyway. So if you have, because I've worked in various small towns, and one of them that I did when I worked in New Germany, they primarily got most of their money from charitable gambling. So you would want an audit then if there's hit that. But there's some relief associations where I've worked where that's just what their fund is up to because of the membership and how long they've worked there, and they're not materially changing anything. So the auditors would weigh all of that. And we're just talking about a dollar amount, and there are already safeguards in certain amount of money and they're nonprofit too. So you've got enough triggers there if you hit that, but I don't think it's going to cause any problem.
All right, I see Ron and then Carl.
Yeah, and my comment would be just adding to Eric's point. Many relief associations obviously have charitable gambling, and maybe that's why I get the question in my training classes on a regular basis, because when we talk about this point and the question is asked, we say 500,000. They say, "Well, I thought it was 750." So clearly, it comes to their mind that way. So anyway, I'm fully supportive of the direction we're going. I like the comments, and I appreciate the dialogue.
All right, Carl.
again, leaning a little bit on my nonprofit background. So we might be conflating a little bit two things here. So 750 is for nonprofits is for revenue and expenses. And I think that single audit threshold is that too. We're talking about just assets or liabilities. Those are different things. And so they would still be, they could be quite different in how you look at it. So, I mean, for a relief to have $750,000 of expenses in a year or income in a year would be a big different than $750,000 of assets or liabilities.
Oh, I think you're making a fair point, and that's a good deep cut there. That's impressive. So I think that you're right. I think we have to be careful if we were to go with the 750,000 to not say it's because of the same reason that it's $750,000 for a single audit or for gambling is not the same reason. However, I think there is a benefit that it's easier for people's heads, but that may not be the reason why we're not tagging it, because and then so then if any of those other numbers were to change, you wouldn't assume that this number would then also change.
Well,
so it's more about getting ahead of it. I don't know, Diane, you're also saying.
Well,
Diane,
I was just going to mention that if we're in normal situations where like another kind of local government, an auditor is going to look at like the larger of revenues or assets or that kind of thing. They're going to in determining their materiality. And one thing with relief associations, it's pretty easy to kind of know and verify what they're not revenues, but what the contributions are. A lot of it is known amounts, so you can confirm it. And then your biggest expenditures are going to be benefit payments. You can do a lot of analysis on payments also. And so anything that's left over is kind of small in comparison. So you got a little bit less risk there because there's so much known between what's coming in and going out of a relief association.
Okay, Sue, I think you're next.
Well, and I was also going to say that because GASB standards are different than FASB standards, and nonprofits are under FASB, where government's under GASB, and we still have to put the relief associations in ours. And actually in ours, it depends upon, it does look at revenues and expenditures and assets and liabilities. So and the auditors are going to look at that because they've got to incorporate that into our financial statements too.
Oh, this is everything I was hoping that we could be talking about. This is for, I know that most people may not come here for this audit detail, but I hope that people are watching this. By the way, I forgot to mention at the top too, if you're watching this on YouTube, there should be a link in the description to also get access to all the documents we are sharing so that you're able to follow along as well. So maybe just getting a sense of kind of where we are, the idea of making sure that we're not conflating things, that idea notwithstanding. Am I reading this right, that we may be to a place where we could agree on raising this to $750,000? Maybe I particularly want to hear if anybody is not there to make sure that, I feel like that's where we're going, but I particularly in the room, especially if we missed a couple, as we had that little break, are there anybody like to say, hey, you know what, the 750,000 isn't where I want to go with that? Michael, I see your hand. I go Michael and then Eric.
That was a thumbs up, auditor.
Oh, that was a thumbs up. Okay, thumbs up. Okay, thank you. Eric, I see you next.
I would make that motion if there was further second or further discussion on 750.
And I would second that.
Okay, well, let's put it out there. So we have a motion that, let me see if and Rose, make sure I'm explaining it well, is that we would increase the threshold to $750,000. And I think that would be the motion, right? And then with the understanding that this would be something that we would keep an eye on going forward. We would continue to do that. So is there anyone who'd like to speak to that at all further? Okay, I see Daryl.
That would be once in, you stay in then also, or would that be, we'd get rid of that between 500,000 and 750? And this is assets and also liabilities at 750 then, correct?
Rose, I want to make sure that I'm going to go to you to make sure you're confirming that as well.
So the 750 would be in either special fund assets or special fund liabilities. So if either of those exceed 750, an audit would be required. And I think the group is looking to not have an audit required for relief associations below the 750. So if you're audited right now, but below 750, you no longer would be audited under this proposal.
But then afterwards, but then going forward, would it still be the, once you're in, you stay in?
Once you're in, you stay in. That has been really helpful, I think, both for our staff and I think for the auditors for planning purposes, and also for relief association trustees where you don't, if you're kind of right by that threshold and you're bouncing back and forth from year to year, it can be hard for planning, especially if you're working with an audit firm and looking out, doing contracts for a few years. So we would propose, I think our preference would be to do the once you're in, you're in.
I see Sue next.
The other thing you have to do is once you're in, you should stay in only because the city has to put that in their financial statement too, and their auditors are going to be looking for it. And then you're going to incur that bouncing back and forth, and that they don't know for sure if they've got to fit it in or if they're waiting for it, and you get that confusion in there. So I think it's easier once you're in, you stay in, because then your city financial statements and your auditor and that whole process is streamlined.
Great. I think there's one other idea too, Rose. We're talking about timing on this too, just to kind of make sure that we're kind of on the same page on timing. We wouldn't necessarily be able to get this, once it passes, it wouldn't necessarily be instant. So Rose, could you maybe just remind us what year could this really feasibly actually start?
Yeah, so the audit requirement is audits are required by June 30. And because the working group bill is usually rolled into the pension omnibus bill, and that usually is, if it passes, it's usually right toward the end of session, so that's late May. So we probably would do like a effective date of January 1, 2024. Wait, 2022? What year are we in?
We're in 22, so I think it's 23 you're looking at.
Would be right.
It'd be starting 24, but your audit wouldn't you wouldn't see that till 25.
Well,
oh wait, so I think
I was going to say effective, it should be effective for a year ending December 31, 2023, because that audit would be due June 30th of 2024.
Yep.
There you go. That works out better.
That's usually how all of the financial stuff is worded, and how the GASB standards are worded when we know what has to be in effect where, and the auditors know. So if you put it effective December 31st, 2023, that's the audit work they're doing in 24.
And that's why I'm really glad that we have Rose and her team and Ramona write this up for us. And so you're absolutely right. Pardon me if I kind of got that confusing, but so we'll, as soon as we can do it feasibly. But what for anybody who is watching this, who is concerned about their very next audit, this will not necessarily help you on that one. If you've just lost your auditor, we're not going to be able to help you on that situation, but it will help you after that. Okay, other further discussion. All right, let's go for a vote. And again, one thing just as a reminder to anybody who's watching this, we only advance things if we are unanimous. So if there is any objection, we do not advance it. So we'll take a vote. So any no will help here, but get yourself unmuted if the vote is coming. Okay, I'm going to try to read this in a way that makes sure we're capturing it. So it would be increase the threshold to $600,000, the audit threshold to $750,000, and working in with the idea that it starts fresh. But again, as always, we will also do a final approval of the actual language when they come back, rewrite it. We'll bring it back, so make sure that's a way to double check that. So we are increasing to $750,000. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say no. All right, I did not hear any no's, and we have a new idea that we're able to put into the bill. This is tremendous. Special thanks then to Diane and Amy also for coming out and helping us with these questions. You're free to go, and so now we'll go back to the agenda as you might see. And so let's go back to now we get to go to Exhibit B, which are the topic rankings. So to see if you were if you placed your bets to see who won on what came up at the top. So Rose, if you want to walk through what our response was to our topics this year.
Sure, and the rankings are the far right column. In a ranking of 1 is what the group thought was most important to take up, and then the ranking of, I think 16 was the bottom. So we'll start with 1 and kind of work our way down, see how many we can get to, and then we'll kind of, if there are some kind of quick ones that we could get in and slide in, we'll do that along the way. But so the ones with the ranking of 1 were the top priority that people had picked on average.
So I think what we see here, I don't know if there's, but we have again the definitions, always an ongoing thing. We'll talk about what role we can help play in that, and then of course, let's see. Maybe I'm looking at something wrong here. I'm looking for that one ranked 1. What ranked 2?
2 is.
Oh, there it is. I see it. I see it. I'm sorry, it didn't show up on my screen for a second. So yeah, 2 showed up with the issue that came up last year, to have a discussion of that again, about our position on requirement to invest with the State Board of Investment. And 3, the threshold, we've already got number 3 done. So, which is great. And so with the audit threshold, and again, following from there, any discussion, questions, or comments on the rankings? All right, looks like we're ready to go. All right, so let's go to then our item 2, going to the idea of firefighter definitions. Always a fun topic in any group when we get together and talk about this, and definitely something that legislators always appreciate that we are talking about in a clear way. So with that, Rose, I'll let you kind of walk through firefighter definitions and what our discussion could be about that.
Okay, so firefighter definitions. So the working group was asked to take a look at definitions a few years ago. And at that point, we talked about it, and we did kind of start coming up with some agreement on what it means to be a volunteer firefighter, paid on call, part-time, or full-time firefighter. And we also had some help with from Jason Keenly, who's with the Office of the Reviser of Statutes, and he pulled together information from us when the working group last looked at this, which is Exhibit D. And Exhibit D has what the definitions are in different places in the statute right now. So some of these firefighter terms are defined in different places and are used in different ways. And so the question is, does it make sense for there to be definitions added to the Relief Association statutes? And if so, what should those definitions be? Or another idea too is, would it make sense in the Relief Association statutes to refer to definitions that exist in other places? So like, for example, the Board of Training and Education has definitions that they use. And if those definitions make sense for Relief Association pension purposes, should we use those ones or refer to those ones? So what we had looked at was kind of 3 criteria for defining types of firefighters. And those criteria were compensation, whether the firefighter was paid per call or hour or salaried, their availability, whether the firefighter could choose when they're available or whether they have scheduled hours, and then the type of pension. So whether the firefighter would be eligible to receive a pension through either a Relief Association or the statewide volunteer firefighter plan with PERA, or whether their pension is paid through the PERA, Police and Fire Plan, or coordinated plan. So the chart there kind of shows for the 4 different firefighter types, what those metrics are. There also was a discussion about defining what a combination fire department is. That term is used a lot, and it is used now too for relief associations that elect to split state aid with their affiliated municipality. So that authority is provided, but only in instances where the fire department is a combination fire department. And so we have kind of what has been discussed as a definition for that, which is a fire department with at least one full-time or career firefighter and at least one volunteer or paid on-call firefighter. So the considerations for the group would be, do we still agree with the characteristics that were identified in that chart for purposes of draft? Do we still agree with that definition of a combination fire department that's identified there above? And then do we feel that there is a need to add specific definitions into chapter 424A, which is the chapter that sets out the benefit provisions for relief associations? Or would it make more sense to refer to definitions that exist someplace else in the statute, like for the firefighter training and education? Oh, Julie, I think you're muted.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, getting back in the habit here of that. So I think that we might be able to go through questions kind of 1 or 2 relatively quickly. Question 3 might take us a little more time, right? And so maybe let's break that down in that order. Question 1, is there anybody who thinks we need to look at the chart above? Is there any desire to reconsider any of that? And I see Eric, and I'm just watching for hands or something like that. Let's start with Eric. Eric, then Carl.
Thank you, Auditor. I like the chart. So this item's been #1 on the Chief Association pecking order for a long time. We think there's a lot of confusion in the statutes, which we saw with the documents and the exhibit. I forwarded this information to the executive board at the Chief Association. They're all in agreement with the way the chart's laid out. They actually like the simplicity of looking at the chart. So we're very happy with the way that is going. I just put in the chat, FEMA actually describes combination fire department in the US code, section 15. And they say that that has 1 paid personnel and 1 volunteer. If we want to call that career full-time, I think we'd be fine with that too. But I think keeping it that aligns with what FEMA says in the US code.
Thank you. So I see Carl next. And then do I see Dan? Are you also raising your hand down there?
No, I'm just itchy forehead.
Okay. All right. Yeah, you move your arms. It's kind of like a live auction. You're going to buy it. All right. So Carl, I see Carl next. Okay, Carl, if you could, let's see, thank you. And then I see Sue after Carl.
Yeah, my experience outside of my own relief association might be a little bit limited, but I do like the chart, and I think it's nice and clear. One question maybe to Chief Bullen there is, I feel like I know some firefighters who might be POC members, but they do still have like scheduled shift coverages on other departments where they are, this is the week that they have coverage, that they're doing medicals or they're doing the ambulance runs or they're doing the whatevers. And does that kind of blur the line between then the part-time, they have the firefighter choice versus scheduled hours there? I don't know. That was just kind of question.
I'll pop to Eric, and then I know Sue also would like to weigh in on that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, you're talking duty crew stuff. We would say that is part of the paid on call system, that department has chosen to schedule those people on those shifts, and it's purely tied to the pension benefit that they're entitled. So duty crews from a paid on call fire department are not eligible for either coordinated or PNF. They're still covered by their relief association.
And Sue, maybe, I don't know if you're speaking to that or something else, but either way.
Well, I can speak to both of them. I like the chart because Eric and I were kind of on the same page when we talked about it a couple of years ago. Because when I worked at a couple of my cities where we had the combination where the chief was a career firefighter and he was in the para police and fire, but everybody else was paid on call. And then we added duty crews. And so when they were scheduled part-time, they were in the police and fire, but if they did volunteer like off their shift, then they were in the firefighters. And so this chart lays it out really nice. And this makes it very easy because this is how we paid them. And this is how we showed which plan they belonged in. And it just lays it out really nice to explain to the firefighters where their hours are going and how they're being paid and how their hours are being tracked. And it was easy for the city councils and it was easy for your payroll system. So this is kind of how most of the cities that I've worked in, this is kind of how the chart that we follow and how we do things, but it lays it out really clear for everybody so they know what the expectation is and where they're working.
Okay. Any other comments? Well, maybe we extend into the next question too, is because we kind of, I think they seem to go together really well. Both questions or combination fire department, either of those, either the things we've already have. Any other comments on that? I get the impression that we're feeling confident with what we already have. So maybe question 3 takes a little more discussion. Again, the idea of adding definitions to chapter 424A, or do we continue to, Rose, can you remind me, can we say that one more time? Just explain that one more time, that question, and then we'll go to Eric after that.
The question is whether we want to include these definitions in the statutes that are specific to relief associations. Because Exhibit D shows all the other places in statute that have definitions. And so the question is, do we feel like it's important to have definitions that are specific to relief associations that may be different from definitions that are being used someplace else? Or instead of creating new definitions that are specific to reliefs, should we instead refer to ones that exist in other places if those make sense?
Yeah, I think Eric is weighing in first on this.
Yeah, I think for sure, I think we should start in the Relief Association section. If you look at some of the 353G stuff, like the Paris stuff refers back to 424A for their definitions. So if we drive it from ours, like if you look at page 4 of Exhibit D, subdivision 9A Relief Association means blah, 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 and it refers to 424A. So I think if we change our definitions in the Relief Association section, that will cover some of that stuff. I mean, ultimately, the Chief Association would like to drive those definitions to anything that talks about firefighters. We saw some confusion at the pension last year. I mean, they're not, sometimes we don't know which level of firefighter or relief association or pension we're working with. I think if we can drive some of that. The 299 language is specific to the MBFTA. I talked to Executive Director Flaherty this week. Any definitions that we change won't affect the MBFTA at all. All he's doing in his definitions is describing who needs a firefighter license and who can get one if they want to. So there was no impact to us changing things on our end as far as definitions go. They weren't going to affect his 299N stuff at all.
All right, so further comments or thoughts on that? Sue, I see Sue next.
Oh, I agree with Eric. I think the one with the licensing, I don't think matters, but the other ones I do think causes confusion, especially if you end up with somebody who's being real black and white and reading and it doesn't say the same thing. You go down the rabbit hole of trying to explain and go back. And I think the clearer you make it, especially when you get people who, like we're in the working group, we know what we're talking about. The people in the pension committee who approve this will know what they're talking about. But then you go into the future with future relief associations, or when some of us are gone on the committee, or even, people in your office are gone, the interpretation could get blurred if we don't make them consistent now.
Maybe I have a question then that makes sense, for Rose and your team. How, and maybe Susan and Chad as well, it's how tough would this be? How much effort would it be to go through? Are we going to have a 500-page bill if we have to do this? Or tell us about kind of the logistics of doing this if we were to start pushing those changes through.
I think we'd have to look at that. We wouldn't want to just create a definition and plunk it into the definition section without reviewing the impact it could have. So I think we'd want to look at, look at all the language and make sure we don't cause any unintended consequences. Like specifically, I'm thinking of like eligibility for benefits or for pensions. Like we wouldn't want to do something that all of a sudden cuts people out or adds in people. So
Yeah, I think if I can jump in, this is Ramona. Rose, I agree with everything Rose said. I think we'd want to kind of take the map that Jason started for us in 2018 and kind of cross-check what the implications would be. And I guess one thing that is on my mind has to do with the sections where the volunteer firefighter term, or maybe some of these other terms, are used without definition or without reference. And so I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud here, I don't know if it would behoove us to look into clarifying, and I don't know if it's appropriate for it to come from this group, but to find those spots and clarify where those terms, or which definition those terms should be tied to. Do you know what I mean? So, adding things like volunteer firefighter within the meaning of section blah, 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 blah. Or maybe that's not our, or it might not be this group's charter to do something like that, but I think it's probably something we'd want to flesh out, and we would want, if we did pursue legislation, we'd want the LCPR to be aware that this is a consideration and something that they should also be thinking about or aware of.
Yeah, I see both Susan and Chad up. Would either of you like to comment on that?
Yeah, I'll just note, I think if you're making changes to 424A only, that's not much of a concern. Anytime you're making changes outside of that chapter, we would just want to make sure that the other stakeholders who could be affected by it are aware of the changes. And of course, if it's going to move forward through this group's vehicle, then typically those are going to be changes that aren't objected to by any other groups.
Right.
And then I just think that probably for the undefined usage, a lot of it doesn't really impact this group very much. Looking at the Good Samaritan law, I doubt it matters very much how specific you are about what volunteer firefighter means. And it's going to be the sort of thing that's going to come up in a court proceeding anyway, where there's going to be somebody making a determination about whether that term fits. So I think for a lot of the undefined usage, I would just want to know, is there a real reason to add a definition here or not? If there's not a good reason, then I'd probably just leave it as is.
So it sounds like, if I'm hearing this right, that if we want to take a look at this, if we can kind of stick to 424A, that seems to be the safest option for us to be looking at that. Other comments? Daryl, yes.
I haven't taken a lot of time and looked at 424A in the statutes and things, but it seems like a lot of the statutes are labeled volunteer, like volunteer firefighter state supplemental benefit. I would agree we should have some definitions in there, but we also might want to take a look at just some of the headings on what some are relief association, some are volunteer relief association. I don't know why those are spelled out differently or why some of the categories are listed that way. So I think we should clarify some of these things and maybe take a good look at why they're listed that way.
That makes sense. I haven't gone to the conference room for a while. Is there anybody in the conference room I'm missing? Okay, I'm not seeing anything, so let's go to Eric.
424s are, it's right, watch your own bobber. This is the one we're specifically talking about, which is good. I mean, I would hope that if we move forward with these definitions, I would hope that once we've got something out there, that these other places would, some refer directly to 424, but I think it drives a further discussion, whether the Chief Association, Department Association go through their legislative assistance or whatever too. But I think 424 is obviously the place to start before we start looking at. We found out last year we had some far-reaching tentacles that we weren't aware of on something that started out pretty simple, right? So I get that complexity to the rest of the state code. So
we are coming up closer to the end of our regular meeting time. And so maybe a question I have is, Rose, do you have the information you would need to take a look at some of this, or maybe I'm going to ask you to encapsulate this, because I feel like I don't want to capture this and get this wrong here. What are you hearing, and what do you think your charge is here?
I think so. So I think what I'm hearing is, and I think maybe what we could work to be prepared to share with the group at the next meeting would be to take Exhibit D that Jason had put together, kind of update the 424A references for the 2022 statute. So we're starting fresh with where we are at today, and then identify where the terms volunteer firefighter or firefighter are used. And, you know, maybe go through and highlight those so we can, if there's any questions about what that, if that usage could be impacted or not. And then also to try to draft up, like to put the chart into words.
So if there's no objection, it looks like that's what we're doing, that we've given Rose a fun assignment to bring back to us. Eric, I see you there.
One sidebar too, and Rose, correct me if I'm wrong, but so the assumption for the paid on call is that that member would go into the coordinated fund unless that city council authorizes a resolution to move them into the PNF. So Brooklyn Park just went through that with some part-timers. So Chief Cunningham was pretty familiar with that process. So the assumption is coordinated unless the council authorizes movement to PNF. So I don't know if that needs to be part of the discussion or if that's just anecdotal for this group, if they have any questions on how that happens or how that transfer happens.
Any other comments on that? So I think I'm reading it as a helpful thing to help us get our kind of all of our heads in the right spot on this. All right, so I think that Rose, you all know what you need to do next. And then I think looking at our time, it's good that on here, though, we do have the idea about an issue that also comes up, and I know we had a lot of discussion last year, was the requiring investment through the State Board investment. And so I think that could maybe be the first thing we talk about at the next meeting. And this might not be a bad time to also, if there's anybody who, I know that people had some pretty extensive discussions with, do I have this right now, soon to be Senator Rasmussen, correct? I believe he was elected senator going forward. And so I'll also maybe, if there's anybody else you want to reach out to, anybody else who wants to maybe be part of this, who would want to be watching our next meeting on there, or connecting, because I know that you've had some discussions outside of this group that I think were particularly fruitful. So if there's no objection, that'll go on our next discussion. And then we would go next to, again, through item 7 and keep rolling in that direction. So with that, is there any further business for the group today that we think we need to get in at this point? All right, hey, we handled, so I'm good to say we handled a hybrid with the chair in a different location, and even with a technology glitch, and we still kept in there and got it all done. Well, again, thank you all for your work today. Looking forward to the discussion next week, and we've already got something knocked out, so well done. And with that, the meeting is adjourned. Can't wait to see you all again in a little bit.
Bye,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, I think I have to end the meeting for everybody, correct? Maya, am I right on that? Oh, no, you're also a host. I'm just gonna leave then. And Maya, you are in charge.
Fine, be that way.
I will come and cough on you all next time. I'll, if y'all want germs, I got you next time. I'm gonna be there next time. Later.